We don't.
I know one thing, it doesn't get better with age.
No.
Good day. Welcome to NAC TV's Coffee Chat. My name's Lyle Watson, and we're very pleased to have as our guest today the retiring MLA for our constituency of Agassiz. Thank you for taking the time, Eileen, to join us today, and I think I'm going to start by asking you, is it an emotional time? You've only got about 6 weeks left. How are you feeling about that?
Well, life has been busy, so thinking or dwelling about, what it's going to be like or my decision to retire doesn't really focus to the top all that much. I've been at home a lot more in the last 4 weeks, still going back into the city for meetings, but very minimal. And a bit of virtual meetings or telephone calls, etc., that I have to deal with. But it feels like a transition period for sure, and I know that the end is coming very quickly. But I'm looking forward to it. My decision was solid when I made it to leave politics. It was a good decision. It was the right time, and I've got a very long to-do list that has been growing even since I got home because. Politics has taken a big part of my time. Yeah. And now I look forward to transitioning to a little less stress, probably more physical work, but I look forward to that.
So do you have any specific plans for the near future as you go into retirement, or do you have anything you can share with us on your journey?
Well, that's a question I get asked just about every day. So what's next for you? And no, I have no plans. I honestly don't. A lot of people find that very hard to believe. They think that there will be something else in my life that I will latch onto. At this point, no. People talk about government committees that I could, or boards that I could sit on. I'm not sure that that's something I want to do. I think perhaps I just would like a clean break from a lot of the issues and spend time in my home life, which I've not had the opportunity to do. I'm in my 51st year of working force, and I've never had that opportunity to be an at-home person. And I have a long list of things that I'd like to accomplish just within my personal life at home.
Yeah.
So whether it be baking or cooking or cleaning or just rearranging everything, but these are things I have not had the opportunity to do.
Well, you've had a wonderful legacy in terms of serving your community and the province and our local constituency, so it's time that you deserve the time to spend a little bit of time at home and do what you have to there, for sure. Currently, Eileen, you are still serving as Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Affairs, and you're still on the Treasury Board as a member of that board, are you not?
I am. I actually have those meetings coming up next week. I have three days of meetings, with two with Treasury Board, one with Cabinet, and also on the Economic Development Committee of Cabinet. Those are all committees that I really enjoy, and I will miss being a part of the economic development of the province, and I will miss the Treasury Board. I've really enjoyed it the past year plus it's more than a year, it's almost 2 years that I've been on it. And through a very vigorous budget this past year where, the revenue was better than we expected and there was money to be spent. It's more difficult spending money that you're not expecting than people would understand, probably. But it's been an amazing journey, really, to sit on these boards within government and know every aspect of the decisions made. And I guess sometimes it causes me some frustration because when I hear comments from the public about decisions that have been made, and I think of all the labor mentally and physically that goes into reaching even the smallest decisions. But no regrets. It's taken a lot of time, it's taken a lot of effort, but I look forward to seeing this election through. I'm told I'm not done until new cabinet ministers are appointed, so that will be after the election date.
Okay, that was my next question.
Yeah,
When will you be done?
I will be done after the appointment of new cabinet ministers. And also I've been asked by the clerk of government to come back and help to orientate new members. And that's kind of exciting.
Yeah,
I look forward to that and meeting the new members and just sharing with them a bit of my experience in government, which is very different being a rural MLA to being a city MLA, because we have to live away from home. So it'll be interesting to see the dynamics of a new government and a new party.
So you'll still be working for a few weeks?
I expect that will probably take us through pretty close till somewhere between the mid and end of October.
End of October, yeah. You mentioned you had some extra revenue that you've been able to deal with on the Treasury Board. And of course, being election year, governments tend to spend a little more money. How does the budget look at this point in time going into the election? I don't know if that's a fair question or not, Eileen, but are you comfortable with it at this point?
It's a very fair question, and I'm kind of known to be a real watchdog on Treasury Board. They kind of make fun of it a bit, but I do ask a lot of questions, because that's the reason I went into government, was because of our deficit position.
Yeah.
And you can complain all you want, but if you're not prepared to take action and be part of the solution, then you don't really have a lot to say.
Yep.
So now, I went through those years with Brian Pallister as our premier, where we had to make a lot of hard decisions. I was also on Treasury Board at the beginning for the first 18 months, I believe. It was very difficult because in order to bring that deficit down, we had to make some serious decisions. Difficult going through COVID, because there was enormous expenses that we weren't expecting, some covered by the federal government as well, but not all. And we had no idea what the future would be. We didn't know how long COVID would last. We didn't know how much it would cost. On the healthcare front, anybody that says they could have, should have done things differently did not sit in our seats, and they did not see what we had to deal with and the decisions we had to make. But going into this 2023-2024 budget time, the revenues were good. Manitoba responded from COVID in a way that no one could have anticipated. You would maybe hope for, but it was actually very good. As a province in Canada, we are performing at a very high level. Not in every department, but generally economically. Manitoba's doing really well. Is there additional money from the federal government? Yes, there is. But all this money comes from one taxpayer, individuals. So it was good. It's an exhilarating feeling to feel that you can give more to communities, you can give more to healthcare, to education, all the different avenues and funding that we do. It's really good, but finding the balance is very, very difficult. And I have probably been more stressed over this budget than I have on any previous.
Yes, yeah. Well, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
But you do have, and your government does have some interesting larger projects on the table, and I can't think of anything better than the new hospital here. And on behalf of our viewers, thank you, Eileen, for pushing that one through and getting the groundwork started. And it's just a great feeling to see that new hospital coming, because we certainly need it here. Drive through Portage the other day. In fact, I was at a doctor's appointment in Portage. I look out the window of the hospital, and there's a big hospital going there. Those are two very big projects in themselves. What are some of the other projects that you have going that you might like to share with us?
Thanks. Well, those projects are important, and it's interesting because when I was campaigning for the nomination back in 2015, coming out of the Neepawa area, the hospital definitely was a very large issue and it had been for many years. So I was pleased to be able to, when the opportunity was there for me, to stand very strong for this hospital, and I did.
Yep.
And I'm lucky my voice was heard, because there's also a lot of demand for personal care homes and other medical facilities as well. Portage and Neepawa are both very much in need of this. They're considered hubs within their own region, so very, very significant. I think the vocational school, I remember when I first met with Superintendent Jason Young, and he talked on this about this vocational school that they had been planning as a board, thinking about, and within my term, it's going to be a reality. That's huge, because that isn't just for Neepawa again, it's for the whole region.
Yeah.
He talked about that vocational school being available to First Nations, to Hutterite colonies, so that their young people could get educated and get their licensing in, whether it be electrical, plumbing, or so many different trades that would be available, and be able to do it while living at home. This is huge. People have been asking for this for years. The upgrades on 34 Highway between Gladstone and Austin has been huge. I'll talk about Keystone Concrete at the far end, and he has called me repeatedly and expressed his appreciation. He's been hauling cement full-time to the new Neepawa Hospital. He could not have gotten that contract because of restrictions in the spring if that 34 Highway hadn't been upgraded. And I mean, I don't take personal credit for all of this. It's group decisions within our government. But they did hear my voice. And I think, if I'm going to speak to this position at all, you are there to speak for the people. And I know not everybody agrees with every decision that's made within government. Sometimes our voices are heard, and sometimes our voices bring forward a priority. But there's lots of other priorities in different regions of the province. And when we're making decisions, we have to make decisions for the whole province, not just for Agassiz, not just for Riding Mountain, for every different constituency where there is need. And there had been a void in, for instance, highway maintenance for a number of years. This government has put a lot of money and effort into highways, and, but the highway budget is so much more than just highways. It's got a very broad aspect. It's airports, it's ferries, it's a lot of things where the dollars go, and people don't see this. So I've tried to be very transparent in my work and the work of the government, so that people do have a bit of an understanding. I try to educate, not just my constituents, but in my roles throughout government, where it has taken me all across the province. I try to be transparent, so that people do have a better understanding of government.
Yep. Well, I was somewhat disappointed, but I fully understand. I had requested that you get 227 from Westburn to Marquette paved in your term, and I know it's still a long ways off, and I totally understand the reasons, but I'm still disappointed.
Well, it's not within my term, but it is in the 5-year plan. So it has been announced. And so it's there, but I mean, there's other critical highways that are absolutely impassable, and I think of 34 South with the Assiniboine Bridge that has been malfunctioning, and a road that is literally falling apart into the valleys. So it comes down to safety. It comes down to the highest need and the highest volume of people, and each decision has got a lot of different aspects to it.
It's just I happen to travel that road quite often. And it's still dusty. Anyways, the health and education, of course, is a big part, the biggest part of your budget. But here in Neepawa, with the start of the nursing program, the new hospital, the school, we're probably set to become the regional head of this region, and I think Neepawa is going to benefit for them all, as well the province.
Neepawa is considered a hub within our government, which is really important in rural areas where you can focus, goods, services, and facilities. And I think, like you said, the hospital, and the fact that there's working at training nurses in rural areas, because we have a lot of young mothers or younger people. It's very expensive to go and live somewhere else. It's not just the cost of the course, it's the cost of living while you're there. And I think it's a known fact, if we've got young mothers or the younger generation here, they're choosing to live in rural Manitoba now because they can actually afford to live here. They can afford to buy homes, or they can afford to be more independent in rural Manitoba. And I think that's a really great step forward, and that's happening throughout. And you asked about other projects. I think the number of schools that this government is building, our population has increased dramatically. And it's increased not only in Winnipeg, but outside of Winnipeg. We see areas like Niverville, Nipawin, and a lot of smaller communities that are thriving and growing. And, you know, not everyone chooses to live in Winnipeg or the suburbs of Winnipeg. Not everyone can live there. And so I think, you know, we have to build this province overall. And we're seeing that in northern Manitoba now too. There's a lot of focus on northern Manitoba, which they have been asking for years and years and years. And things are changing in a very positive way. I sometimes feel some remorse that I won't be a part of what happens in the next chapter, because I find it really, really exciting, the economic development. But I also know my person that will end up probably being the MLA in this area will carry on in a very strong way. So great comfort in that.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Yes, I was thinking in terms of projects and the voice of government. You know, oftentimes we hear the social media and people saying that there's no voice within our government outside the perimeter. And I think you did bring the government voice outside the perimeter, and you took our voice inside the perimeter. And I think you've done a good job of that, Eileen. And it couldn't have been easy. I'm sure it's not easy to do either.
It's not always easy. And I found, surprisingly, very often found that I stood alone. And yeah, that's not easy, but that didn't deter my determination, let's say, because we have many rural MLAs, but some have been in government for quite some time, most of the time in opposition. And I think the longer you're away from, you know, as I said, rural MLAs have to live in the city, and I think you become more attuned to what's going on in the city, and you meet a lot of new people and a lot of new organizations that we work with. And you know, I think it becomes easy to concentrate on that. I will never lose my rural roots, and I think a lot of that is because I was in business for 33 years, actually still in business. In rural Manitoba. I depend on the people. We depend on the people within our jurisdiction to make a living. And consequently, I see all the voids. As having been mayor, I see the voids in rural communities, and I always try to focus even more on smaller communities, much smaller than Nipawin. When I was going out on my visits, I made sure I went to the smallest of the small to know that I make sure they knew they had representation, they had a voice. And I think municipalities all across the province knew that. When I had the good fortune of being municipal minister for 1 year again in 2022, it was a fantastic year for me. You know, because I know these municipalities from smallest to largest. I know where they are. I know what they're doing. And I sense their relief having somebody represent them that knew intimately what their issues are and how they could be dealt with. And we were able to resolve, you know, a lot. And I think, you know, I'm actually quite proud of that I got that opportunity and I put it to good use. It was a very hard work year because I put everything I had into it, but I wasn't disappointed when I was brought back into the Indigenous portfolio either. So that has also been a good part of my life.
I remember on a previous coffee chat, Eileen, we were talking about the Indigenous portfolio and Northern Affairs, and you had mentioned there was some 50 centers, I believe, in Northern Manitoba that you work with. Is that?
Well, there's 62 First Nations all across the province. And there's 52 Northern Affairs communities, 52. Which are very tiny, very, very tiny. But that is actually that's probably where my last speaking engagement will be next week, is at their conference on Tuesday. I'll go and that'll be my final words. They're one of the first groups I met with in 2016. And I had no idea at that point that there was these 52 little unincorporated communities across northern Manitoba. And they're a fantastic group of people. They're very remote and they're a great deal of fun, but they're kind of unknown.
Yeah.
And that's the part about my position in government has been very, very unique, because I got to deal with those communities. I got to deal with all the First Nations communities. I got to work with the Métis Federation, with David Chartrand and his whole crew, and they're also a great bunch of people. Also got to meet with the Inuit, which is a small group within Manitoba, but growing, and they also have challenges. But within municipal, it's all 137 municipalities from smallest to largest, as well as during COVID, 130, probably getting closer to 140 Hutterite colonies all across the province. And I mean, it was, I don't think anybody else can claim that.
No, no.
It's very broad, but it's been really exciting.
And you've always had a very open mind, and we're very inclusive of everyone, and it just gives you the opportunity to grow your personality. And with that, I would like to ask your thoughts about Indigenous reconciliation, and what are some of the highlights working with the Indigenous population and the Northern Reserve? Well, the Southern Reserves too.
For sure. And reconciliation is a very broad word. We have the Truth and Reconciliation report that was brought out, and it's got boxes to check. I've never been, a part of me does not think that is reconciliation. To me, reconciliation is how we live and work and play together every day of the year, through respect and understanding and participation. So, reconciliation, yes. But I think if I look back on the time I have had in government and the position, most of that in Indigenous department, when I look back to my first days, and especially now, I've been watching as a lot of the annual general assemblies of the First Nations are taking place, and their treaty days and their powwows. And I see who the new chiefs are, and I see how their communities are functioning now and participating and in partnership with not only government, but with their municipalities, with mutual organizations, and I'm going to refer to mining, forestry, in so many areas where they're actually working together, respectfully working together. We have come, as a province, we have come a long ways in 7.5 years. And that was my job. My job, every department that I've been ahead of ends with relations. So it's about relationships. And I take great pride in that. I'm not the only person that did that. You have to have willing partners. But it didn't matter whether I was talking to colonies. I will share one story. Having worked for First Nations and colonies, I had a colony that reached out to me and said, how can we help more with First Nations? We build. What can we do? We like to give back. I'd also had a chief in the Interlake that had been left out of funding during the 2011 flood for whatever reason. They did not get any funding. And I spoke to them. I said, there's this one colony, and I said, they need help. And ultimately, the chief builder from the colony in my constituency and that First Nations got together. They took a group, I think about 4 or 6 guys. They went in for, I think, less than a week, and they completely rebuilt and redid a home. They spent time, they had fish fries, they went fishing in the evenings, and they worked together reconstructing this home for a family that desperately needed a home. If I look back to my time in government, that's probably one of my proudest moments. And they both feel the same. They've got a strong connection. And I see Hutterite colonies going to the different reserves right now, or to communities close by, and they're bringing in truckloads of vegetables for First Nations people. That's not new. They've always done that. They give back. But when I look across our province, and we hear, you talk about social media, you talk about media, all we hear is the negative. In my world, I have seen so much positive, and it overwhelms me. But often I'm the only one seeing it, and I try to share that with my colleagues, and I have taken colleagues with me to different areas to see and experience what I experience. And I feel I have had probably the best experience of anybody in this government for the last 8 years because I got to experience people coming together.
Yep.
And I know I was a part of it. I'm not the only part of it. But if I have anything to be proud of, and I'm seeing that grow.
Yep. Well, as Judy and I traveled around a little bit, we notice a lot of advancement in reconciliation and the fact of First Nations people starting their own businesses and becoming employed by themselves type of thing. And a prime example is that Wayway Capo, Petro-Canada, now they're building the conference center out just outside of Brandon. That place is busy. It just lined up day in and day out, all the hours they're open. And when that new conference center gets built, it's just going to add that much more. And they're employing a lot of their people. And those people are happy to be there. And I was just gassed up there yesterday, as a matter of fact. And they're just happy there to be working and serving and to help you out, you know. Your windows are cleaned and whatever. So it's good to see. So there is progress on reconciliation, in your opinion? And
a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't see it. Some people don't want to see it. I mean, there's racism, and there's racism in both directions.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'll ever fix that completely. Our world and our province are in turmoil right now. We have a lot of crisis situations that are really, really difficult, and people are less understanding and less forgiving. And it's going to take a lot of work, and I don't think it's work. There's a lot of the work that needs to be done won't get done by government. It's not government. Yep. I think each of us individually has a role to play, and we have a responsibility. And we need to set a good example for our next generations.
Yeah. I've heard several comments in recent days and weeks about the current strike with the Manitoba Government Employees Association, with Manitoba Liquor and Lottery. What are your thoughts on that? Did you ever have any interest of bringing it to binding arbitration or bringing them back to work, or what's the best way to handle that, or is this the best way?
I don't even have a good comment on that. I was on the, I'm trying to think of the actual name of it, but the cabinet committee for all the different the bargaining units that we have within government. I've sat on there for a couple of years, and so I kind of know the inside of that. Many of the bargaining units have been resolved. They have been settled. Did they go too long without, being renewed? They absolutely did. A lot of that was during COVID. Some of it was responsibility of the units themselves. They were not prepared to come to the table or whatever. But picking at who's responsible, who's, which side it is, I don't think that there's any value in that.
No.
Given that all the other units within healthcare, education, judges, magistrates, we have so many different bargaining units within Manitoba. They've all but almost been resolved, and they've come to good agreements. Doctors Manitoba just recently, and all our nursing units, and that. I think that's a lot of what's been wrong with our province is, that these went too long. They weren't resolved when they should have been, could have been perhaps. But our government is, as I said, in a different financial position now too. It's balancing. Wages is a huge part of government finance.
Yep.
But we have to have these people, and we all know the cost of living right now is atrocious. I've never been a penny pincher sort of person, and typically I've gone and bought groceries and I buy what I need when I need, and I find now I'm looking at pricing. I am looking at how badly do I need this week, or will it be on sale next week?
Yep.
So if I'm doing that, how are the next people doing it? With large families, people with very limited income, or practically no income, anybody that's living on just old age pension or that type of thing, that's absolute poverty. So there's there's credibility on both sides. There's fault on both sides.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
so how this is resolved now, I'm not sure. It was kind of interesting on Facebook this morning. I saw where, somebody really stressed privatization, and there is a huge cry for that. There was long before this strike. And the next guy said, "Doesn't bother me a bit. I don't drink. I don't care." So, that's our world.
Yeah,
We
know,
have those that are really affected. Now we're talking about, a lot of the smaller suppliers and
Yeah.
people that could lose their business over this.
Yeah.
So
What-
each person is out there for themselves, and that's the world we're living in. Not a good place,
No,
always.
no, there's some ups and downs for sure.
There is.
As usual, Eileen, our time slips away faster than I would like to see it slip. It's like the summer's gone so fast. Our time here at our coffee chat has slipped away on us too. So, as usual, I would like to give you the opportunity to sum up our program today with a few thoughts that you may have about the past or going into the future.
Well, thank you, Lyle. And first and foremost, I want to thank you because I've always really enjoyed our coffee chats. And it gives me the opportunity, away from government, within my own jurisdiction, my constituency, to talk about the things that I do that people may not always see. I try to work silently and do a good job. But I definitely want to thank the people of Agassiz for trusting me. And, I was in a nomination with 3 people from Neepawa, and I won that nomination, and I was very proud of that. And I've tried really hard to represent fairly and on all issues. And I also I want to thank our 2 premiers that I've served under. They've both given me unbelievable opportunities that I would have never expected. Whether it's cabinet or other especially Treasury Board or other cabinet committees. I was treated very respectfully by both premiers, and I have a great bunch of colleagues that I leave behind. Some of them I know more closely than others, and but working as a team, especially, it's really hard to explain how government works and so on and so forth. But I had a great bunch of colleagues, and I really appreciate that. And the people of Manitoba, because I did get to work from one side, all 4 directions, and that's a unique experience and something I will always treasure. And it's kind of why I'd like to sometimes put it all into a book and put it all together, because right now my life is kind of all over the place. But I think my biggest thank you has to go to Jody Byram, because she has been a faithful companion. She has been my assistant since 2015 when I was first nominated. She worked with me through 2 campaigns for re-election, or campaign for election, re-election, and she took care of this constituency in the most respectful way. She has such good relationships with everyone in the provincial government. When she needed answers, she got them, and she got them promptly. She is so respected there. And now for her to be the candidate to succeed me is overwhelming. There's so much pride in that. And not just pride, but confidence. Because I leave there wishing I could do more, but I know my work is going to continue through her in her own way, which is really exciting. It's very, very exciting. So, it gives me a great sense of hope for the future, because I know there's other candidates that are running that I know, and I think they're also going to bring a lot of skill, a lot of knowledge in different directions, which is exactly what we need for balance. So I'm very optimistic. I think Manitoba has a great future. I think we are just busting out right now, and I think Manitoba overall is going in a good direction. We need people to be positive. We need people to be respectful to each other and bring this province back to friendly Manitoba. I think COVID has split things apart, but I think part of it is our world that we're living in now. It's a different place, but this is where we live, this is where we work, this is where we play. So it's up to each of us to make it a better place. And that's about it. And with that, again, I thank you and NACTV for doing this and giving me a platform. Thank you.
Well, it's certainly been our pleasure to work with you, Eileen, and on behalf of the citizens of Manitoba, the Agassiz constituents and our communities here locally, and our viewers, our NACT viewers. I'd like to express on their behalf, thank you for your dedication, 8 years of dedication and promotion, and the optimism that you bring to the table. And I think you've had 8 good years of hard labor, hard work involved, and you certainly have left a footprint, a large footprint. And on behalf of everyone that I mentioned, we wish you good health and happiness in the years coming. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Take care.
Thanks.
Well, that concludes our coffee chat. My name is Lyle Watson, and until next time, you have a good day, and we'll see you soon.